Hi, I'm Gavin Shields and this is Self-Storage Explained. Expert advice on how to set up and scale your self-storage business. Hello and welcome to everybody who's listening. We have a really exciting episode here. We're joined by Matt from Bien Sûr Self-Storage in France. So Matt is, I've known Matt for a couple of years. They use Stora, and that's why we know him. And what we want to dig into here is just really learn from Matt, his journey in self-storage. And I really would love to dig in to how he runs his self-storage business, because I think there's so much to learn from each other in this industry. And it's always good to share learning. So Matt, thank you so much and welcome.
Hi Gavin. Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Can we start just with could you give us a brief introduction to yourself and you've a very interesting sort of journey into self-storage, I think. Just love to hear a little bit about that as well. Can you just tell the listeners about how you got to where you are today?
Sure. Well, again, so I'm Matt. I'm also the founder of Bien Sûr. So today we have two self-storage facilities in the Paris area. So we're actually close to Versailles. I'm originally I guess I'm an engineer by training. I worked previously in other industries, so in the solar industry and a little bit in finance. And then I launched our company 5 years ago. And so actually, you were saying, how did we launch into self-storage? Well, we actually, at first, we tried to disrupt self-storage. So we launched a valet storage business. So where we would do the moving and the storage for customers. So the advantage was it seemed much more efficient on the storage side because you could store more stuff in less space. But there's a real complexity to the logistics of that. And so we did that for about 2 years. And so after trying to, again, disrupt self-storage, we realized that we had failed. And so then actually we embraced self-storage. And so in 2021, we pivoted and started to develop proper self-storage sites.
That's so interesting. So in 2019, this is what I find interesting here is I almost did exactly the same thing in 2019 as well.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I remember just before about 9 months before I opened my self-storage site, it was November 2018, and I was researching the industry and trying to figure out what should I do. And probably like yourself, I was thinking, I've got to disrupt this. There must be a better way. And then I thought, well, I looked into the whole idea of bringing a box to somebody's front door and then packing it or letting them pack it, and then you come and take the box away. And I found a few other services. There were a few at the time in the UK that did it, and I remember looking at their trying to figure out, are these things profitable or are they making money? And I sort of found out that they weren't. And then I looked at I downloaded Big Yellow's and Safe Store's annual reports, and they were just printing cash. And I thought, well, you know what? Maybe sometimes there's an industry that you don't need to disrupt. You just need to get into it and keep it simple. So is that with your valet storage there? So did you have people actually going and loading stuff up into a van and into a box? Or how did you manage? Did you have a lot of staff there, or how did you manage that?
Exactly. Well, I guess you managed to avoid the trap and figure that out in a few months, whereas it took us 2 years to figure that out. But yes, so actually we started off. I did an MBA program, so and at first we basically were a student storage and shipping company. Again, it worked. We had great traction. Customers loved us. Because we were English speaking in France, which is actually in itself quite a competitive advantage. But it was just way too seasonal. Market was too small. So then we pivoted to, again, valet storage. A bit like you, we tried at first to, you deliver a box, people pack it, but then we realized that 95% of customers have objects that don't fit in the box. Yeah. And so that just business model is just not viable because you're just generating all these leads, and you can only address 5% of them. So it's just not viable. So you've got to offer a moving service. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. For me, the unit economics are extremely challenging. We we had customer traction, so we had maybe 200 customers for valet storage, and actually we still have some customers today because we stopped accepting new customers, but we actually kept those that are in storage, so we still have maybe 30 of them in storage today. But just the whole valet side is just it's just much harder than it seems. Because as kind of you were describing earlier, on paper it just sounds like such a great idea, but really putting it into practice is tough. This moving in general is tough. There's a lot of competition. It's hard to have a competitive advantage, in a sense that and especially if you're a company that does everything, let's say, cleanly, that pays your employees and pays payroll taxes, that pays VAT, which is particularly high in France, and I'm sure it's actually high in the UK. Well, it's very hard to compete against a lot of actors that don't do that, and which is quite widespread in the especially in the low end or in the cheap moving industry. And just the second you start touching people's stuff, it just gets quite complicated.
I remember somebody about 4 years ago, one of my advisors in store stuff, my self-storage business, we were looking at a few ideas, and he said exactly that thing. He said, once you start touching people's stuff, you become liable for their stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
So many more issues. Then somebody's piano falls over, or something breaks, or it breaks, but it's not your fault. There's just so many issues.
Or even if something disappears, like who's to prove that it was there in the first place? If it disappeared, you have many employees. Who stole? Who took it? Was it lost? Was it forgotten? It's just you just don't know.
And self-storage is such the thing I like about it so much is that your gross profit on self-storage is, I don't know, it must be 99%. You've built the units. If there's somebody in there or there's not, your costs are basically exactly the same.
Yeah.
You move somebody in and they're paying you €200 a month. Like, that's all straight to the bottom. Like, there's no additional cost of providing that service. You may attribute a bit of cost to marketing, but it's that's going to happen anyway. So yeah. Okay. Well, that's a really interesting. And
also, what I'd say, another little thing that people don't foresee with valet storage, which can be a bit tricky, is again, when you do a moving quote for a customer, usually there's a list. 80% of customers, the list matches what you said. But there are these 20% of customers where there's usually more stuff than anticipated. And then so maybe you gave them a quote for a certain volume, and then you pick it up, and then he says, well, actually, it doesn't fit in that volume. And the thing is, like in a self-storage unit, if the stuff doesn't fit in the unit, like there's no debate. It just doesn't fit. Like, you need to get a bigger unit. Whereas here, because a customer isn't in the warehouse, they think you're just trying to kind of extract extra money from them. So that's also actually a very, very, very tricky situation.
It reminds me when I moved house almost 5 years ago, as a friend of mine does removals, and I called him. I was like, can you come around? It's probably only a few hours. Everything's packed.
Exactly. It always sounds easy.
2 days later, he's still there. And we still laugh at it because you don't realize how much stuff you have. It's unbelievable.
Exactly. And all the work, and then sometimes you have a desk, you thought it fit through the door, but then it doesn't. You need to dismantle it.
Yeah.
And then another lift doesn't break anymore. Doesn't work anymore. Who knows? There's a lot of variability. Yep.
So Matt, tell us then. So Bien Sûr started in 2021. So you've been there for 3 years. You've got 2 facilities, with more on the way. Can you tell us about the facilities? They're indoor facilities. Can you just tell us a little bit about their size, where they are, how they've kind of developed?
Yep. So again, 2 facilities are both in the Paris suburbs. So they're more precisely close to Versailles, which is to the southwest of Paris. They're both about a 20-minute drive from each other, which is actually quite handy for managing staff and managing any potential on-site issues. It's indoor storage. Our first site has 300 units, and our second has 600. So a total of 900 units. We opened the first site about 1.5 years ago, and the second one 4 months ago. These are they're indoor units. There's no we have, let's say, smart access, in that the entry doors are automated, but there's no, but each unit is closed with a traditional padlock.
Traditional padlock. Okay. Okay. And so 600 units, that one opened 4 months ago.
Yep.
And 300. So you've been the one for 300 units has been open for a year and a half.
Yep.
How has the occupancy journey gone there?
Yeah, well, we've been very happy with how it's filled up. So today on the first one we're at 78% occupancy.
Oh, okay.
So we've I think that's roughly somewhere about 250 units that we've leased, which is actually ahead of what we expected. So we're very happy with that. And the second site, we've actually ramped up even faster. So after 4 months, we're at 120 units. So about close to 20%.
20% there. Wow. Okay.
Yep.
That's amazing. Okay. Because actually a year and a half ago, a lot of people last year, 2023, in the industry would have said it was quite a slow year, quite a challenging year as we come out of COVID. So it sounds like you haven't, well, I suppose you've nothing to compare to before, but you certainly had a successful 18 months since you opened your first site, and that second site's going well too. That's great. What I don't know, can you put that growth down to anything? Like, is there anything that actually before I ask that, I'd just like to understand what's your staffing situation on site? Do you have people on site all the time, 24/7? How do you deal with people on site?
So for our bigger sites, our 600 unit site, we have someone on site Monday to Saturday, basically the full day. And then our smaller site, we have someone that's there 2 days a week. Okay. So Tuesdays and Fridays all day. But the rest of the days it's unmanned. So I'd say that one is semi-unmanned. During the ramp up stage, the small one, we did have someone on site full time. And then when we opened our second site, we moved that person to the other site. So and actually I've been surprised that it hasn't had that big of an impact on ramp up rate. Again, we still have 2 days where we are there, and so actually now I was actually surprised. We actually get quite a few people that well, now our Tuesdays and Fridays are quite busy at that site, because people actually, we write it all over our site that there's no one on site the rest of the time, and so I've been surprised that people do seem to plan around it.
Okay. So then back to my question, so like, is there anything what do you put the success down to? That you've clearly done a great job here.
Thank you. Well, I think I'd say there are a few reasons. I think the first one was site selection. We really, before looking at sites, I mean, I visited maybe, I don't know, a good 80 warehouses before signing our first one.
80? 18?
Yeah, sorry, maybe not visited, but at least looked at. And then maybe I might have visited 10, 15.
Okay.
And we basically before also what we did is I think a great, let's say, model for self-storage is supply and demand. And with demand being linked to local population and supply being other self-storage centers. So we mapped out actually the whole of Paris and its suburbs, and kind of figured out which zones we thought had an undersupply, so that had high demand.
Okay. And
the warehouse, so our first warehouse, actually a smaller one, we think is in a place that's particularly undersupplied. And so I think that's one of the main reasons why we filled up so quickly, just because we're in a place where no one else is. So I'd say that's the number one contributor. Then I'd say the other ones are, I think if you do, I think in self-storage, as in many industries, if you do the basics right, actually, I mean, you've already done 90% of the way there. I mean, for example, we have, staff that picks up the phone when people call. I think, I mean, I'm extremely happy with the staff we have. They're extremely friendly, patient. We don't try, being too aggressive on a sales side. We really do try to advise people. For example, when a customer calls, we usually tell them, hey, you actually don't need as big a unit as you think. You need a smaller one, and that actually creates a lot of trust. But again, there's nothing, there's no silver bullet. Yes, I think so good stuff. Also, I think we have a beautiful facility. We invested a lot. So the first one, we invested about €1 million into the construction.
Yeah.
So, beautiful building, beautiful units. We try to keep it very clean. We try to offer great customer experience as well. So customers can, thanks to Stora, book completely online if they wish to, but also they can call us up, they can come and visit, they can email us. So now we even have a WhatsApp button, so people can contact us on WhatsApp. So really many channels that people can use to contact us.
Okay, the location thing is so interesting because, like you said, it's number one thing, and I'm sure that is absolutely. If you can, it sounds like you really took a really rigorous approach to finding a good spot where you looked for undersupply. First of all, can you tell people, anybody who's new, or even people who are looking to open new sites, like what did you look for there? So you mapped out Paris. Did you go down to like finding every single site in the Paris area, try and figure out how big it was, how much supply there was there, or like how and what did you use? Like, how did you figure out what's the demand? How did you have some?
Well, actually, I'm an engineer myself, so I actually coded a little algorithm, which so on one side I pulled basically population data of all the greater Paris area. So again, that was a proxy for demand. And then I found every single self-storage site. I think there were at the time maybe 120 in Paris. Tried to estimate the size of each one. Cooled up all those that didn't have our prices online. So to our competitors or French friends, sorry if I called you, but yeah. And yeah, based on, and we looked at a few signals such as pricing or where our price is high. Then you can somehow try to get an idea of how occupied a site is, how big it is, and that's your supply. And then we had some algorithm that for every, we then made a GPS grid of all of Paris, and for each location we said, well, calculate what's the undersupply or the oversupply, and then we had an exact listing of from like best location to worst location of every single of each kilometer squared in the Paris area. So
wow.
So that's how we did it. But maybe that's not feasible for everyone. I mean, that did take quite some work, but I think there are easy ways to do it, which is just to see where your competitors are. And actually being close to competition isn't a problem in itself. I think that, well, my take is that the main thing is to be in an undersupplied area. So where maybe around the like a 10-minute drive, 15-minute drive around where you're, I guess, where you're undersupplied.
Yeah.
And then also, I think you obviously want to find a site where the building, works. And there are a lot of, well, I guess, you want it to be the right size. You want it to be accessible. Ideally, you want it to be visible from a street. That's not I'd say that last part is good to have, not a must have.
Your site's visible?
So the first one, not at all. It's completely hidden. You can't see it from a street. And so we've
you filled it to 70%.
Exactly. I mean, we even had at first, we had customers that they wanted to come see us and they just couldn't find us. That's how hidden we are. So we ended up putting up a sign so now people find us. But actually, our second one now is extremely visible from a busy street, and we do know we get a lot of customers thanks to it. So clearly, I mean, it really helps. But I mean, if you're in an undersupplied area, I'd say it's not a must-have.
So this moves, I think, gets us into a topic that I'm really interested in, which, especially given one's visible and one's not visible. So you think like the customer's journey starts, they have a need for self-storage, they go and search for it on Google or they ask a friend or whatever. What are you doing to get found by those customers? How do you get found at the start of the customer journey? How do people find Bien Sûr?
Yep.
I asked that badly, but I asked about 3 times. You get my question, sorry.
Well, most people find us online, again, you're right, on Google. So then there are two ways to be well positioned in Google, let's say Google search, which is right, you do SEO, so you try to have, I guess, a lot of backlinks that point to your site, good content, basically. So we do that SEO. We also do SEA, which is paid ads, which is pay per click, right? We bid on keywords to be the number one, or we're in top 4 results. But I'd say that's probably somewhere between half and 2/3 of our customers, and I think that's a pretty. I mean, for most self-serve operators, that's a number one.
So that's how, even with the site that's not visible, because you're visible online,
exactly.
that's mattered there. Is that how you see it?
Exactly. And then you also, and so some people also search on Google Maps, because they like to find facilities close to them. And it's important to have an updated Google Maps kind of website, a Google Maps page, and reviews. That definitely helps. Go ahead.
Well, the interesting thing about that is, I think, thinking about more sites, you'll pay more for a visible site, like a lot more.
Exactly.
Let's buy in a warehouse. If you know how to be visible online, you could make a decision. I'm actually going to save 20% on the purchase of my site. Maybe save myself £200,000, €300,000, and that's going to make my startup costs lower, and I can reinvest a lot of that and making sure I'm visible online, maybe with Google ads and things like that. But I suppose it depends a lot on the local market and the competition and where they're located. Maybe if you were hidden and there was a really great competitor with a massively visible site, I don't know, maybe it would be a bit different.
Yeah. I mean, and I'd say it also depends on the skills you have, in the sense that we knew a little bit about, let's say, Google and digital marketing before, because we'd done value storage before, and that was 100% online. So we were fairly confident in our abilities to do well there. But it's true, if if a new operator knows nothing about digital, it's a bit risky to risk it all on success on the digital front. So, but yeah, I mean, I think you're exactly right. We're definitely willing to pay more for a visible site. I'd say it also depends on the area, because also on digital you might have slightly younger customers. We do know there are some customers that just won't find us digitally, and then we see that in our visible site, where we actually have some customers who just have never seen our website. Because they see our sign, or sometimes we'll try other campaigns. We've tried handing out flyers, we've tried, I don't know, mailing, old school stuff, and that sometimes works, and it works with a different kind of population. I mean, we've been surprised. We've sent out flyers, and we've had people show up like 4 months later, and then, I saw your flyer, I kept it, and so it depends on the people.
So as well as so you've touched on it, but I was going to ask, what other marketing strategies do you use? So it sounds like online SEO, paid ads. You've tried a bit of flyers. Anything else that you do from a marketing point of view to the initial kind of get customers in the door, prospects in the door?
Well, we try a lot of things, and sorry, apologies. Okay, can you hear me?
I can't. Yeah.
Okay. We like to try stuff and see how it works. That's kind of been our approach. We've tried flyers. Funnily enough, they worked very well at one site, not at all at the other. We've tried street advertising, which worked very well in one site, but not at all in the other. So word of mouth actually has become quite a big thing. So in our first site, although it's quite new, I think we have 8% of our customers are from word of mouth, which is
how do you track that?
We just ask people. We ask them, how did you find us? How did you hear about us? And we try to ask every single customer. Yeah.
Do you give any sort of do you give your existing customers any kind of an incentive to recommend people, or is this just happening naturally?
Yeah, we do. We tell them, but we have not a single person has really asked for it. It's quite surprising, because we obviously we intend on again, there's a referral fee. It's €50 for a customer, €50 for the referee and for the referral.
Okay.
But usually a lot of people only tell us, they've been referred after the fact of signing, and once everything's done, although we do advertise it, so I've been quite surprised. So clearly it works even without.
Okay, and okay, so we've talked a little bit then about how you sort of get prospects in the door.
Yep.
People are either on your website or they're on the phone. How do you handle that then? So I know on your website you let people book online. Can you talk a little bit about just the different strategies you have for turning a prospect into a customer, and how you optimize that?
Yep, of course. So that depends on the, let's say, first point of contact. So I'd say we have 3 main points of contact. One is, well, maybe even 4. So so about maybe 25. Our number is about 25% of our customers book completely online. So they
25.
Completely independent. They don't call us. They don't visit. They just book online. And actually, that's quite a good number. Well, I mean, I think that's higher than a lot of our competitors. And actually, I attribute a lot of that to Store, which I think does a great job on that. So thank you, Gavin.
Oh, yes.
But yeah, and so then for the other types of customers, so we have a lot of people who I think the majority, the first point of contact is that they call.
Okay.
And so obviously usually our calls last from anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes, where we try to understand the customer's need. We usually the number one question they have is, what size unit do I need? And so we try to answer that question. And then they have other questions around safety. How secure is it? How do I cancel? And so we obviously deal with those over the phone. Then most customers won't sign on the spot, although some might. But then so we'll send a quote afterwards, and we'll try to encourage a customer to come visit, because our facility is extremely clean. We've got cameras everywhere. And so true, as soon as customers come and visit, I mean, we know that 80% of them convert on the visit. So that's the phone people. Then we have walk-ins, so people that spontaneously show up to the warehouse. Then we, again, pretty much same process. We show them multiple unit sizes, show them the security features, show them how the sensor works. And it's true, because we have such a big, clean facility, it just creates so much trust. And so I'm very glad we invested a lot into the warehouses. And then occasionally we'll have people that will reach out on WhatsApp or by email, in which case we usually try to get them on the phone, because it's quite hard to respond to people over email. And yeah, I guess that's how we deal with customers. But so as you can see, I mean, what's surprising is, well, at least I remember when I was trying to to try self-storage, I was like, how hard can self-storage be? You just take a warehouse, put some units inside, and you're done. But no, I mean, 75% of customers need to speak to a human. Yeah. So it takes a lot of time, and you've got to train those people. Fortunately, my people are extremely good. So but you've got to train them on what to say, how to handle questions, objections. Yeah, I mean, so far it's a lot of fun.
And yeah, okay. So it sounds like you've got you're obviously doing a lot of stuff right to hit the occupancy levels you've hit so quickly, but it also sounds like you're kind of letting your customers decide what suits them best, and meeting them wherever they are, which is a great approach. If people have questions, you want to answer them.
Yep.
So once they've booked, one of the things that sometimes comes up is like, how do you let people pay? Like, do you, because obviously with our payment stuff, you can have cards, direct debits, but you can also just let people pay by bank transfer and stuff. But the downside of that, it can require a bit more time checking bank statements and marking off invoices as paid, where stuff's automated. Do you force everybody to use a certain payment method, or do you let them? How do you see that?
Yeah, no, spot on. Yeah, we only let customers use direct debits and automatic credit card payments. We don't accept cash. We don't accept checks. We don't accept wire transfers, because you're right, it just becomes too complicated to manage. and also, when it's automatic, well, then customers can forget. So we just keep it simple. And I mean, these days everyone has a credit card and a bank account, and if they don't, then they'll probably be they might be a tricky customer.
Yeah, and that's how I run my sites as well. So I always just use these pool methods. So your customer gives you the
exactly
pull the money out of their account or off the. It's what we all do with Netflix, and it's
exactly
this. And I actually much prefer that, because I trust people to take right amount, and I
agreed.
just have to win every month, like pay some invoices and stuff. So anybody who sent an invoice to me at Stora will know that I might pay it that instant, or it might take 6 months because I just haven't got around to it. So anyway, that's the only thing I often ask people: can I just set up a direct debit here? And if they don't,
yeah, you're right. I mean, it saves everyone time. I mean, both the customer and the supplier. Agreed.
The only instance, and I've only ever had one customer where it's a big business, and they're like, look, we aren't going to give you a card. We were paying about £1,000 a month, and this was really early on. I was like, well, I need to bring them in, and they had to do bank transfer. So I said, okay, and like that was actually for the first 5 or 6 months, like they never paid their invoices. It was a big public company, and I had all sorts of issues. In the end, I had to. Every 6 months, they asked for a reconfirmation of my bank account details. And so I'd send it to them. And then they'd reply, they're saying, oh, no, you actually have to post this now to this address in Singapore. This happened. Actually physically post it. Yeah, you have to post this thing that tells us what your bank account number is.
Yeah.
Post a physical copy to this address in Singapore. And I was like, this was after it took me about 1.5 years to get paid. And this was about 1 year and 3 months into
well, and probably a lot of effort from you.
Oh, it was unbelievable. And so I actually would not do that again. I would never do it. But I know a lot of our customers do have business customers who will, and they've maybe been used to doing it anyway, so that they maybe have the processes in place to manage this, so they still do it. So, do you ever have a business saying, look, you have to send us an invoice, it has to go through our payment department, and we'll wire you the money? Have you ever had that, or just hasn't come up?
Yeah, actually, we had that just one time, and we did it your way. Fortunately, they paid in a reasonable amount of time, but it did right. And actually, we only allowed it. We said it. Okay, it has to be payment for per term as opposed to per month, because I just didn't want to have to handle it. So we did allow it in that one instance. I'm not sure we'd necessarily do it again unless there's a very good reason, because it does. Because then what's tough is it just, as you mentioned, it just takes time. You've got to chase up with people. It's just, and when you have 900 customers, at one point you can't be doing you can't tailor your product to everyone.
I think it's a really interesting thing. We come up with this in this discussion with, especially we've got operators who are moving to Stora and have been used to maybe 10 years of we're raising invoices, and then we're watching our bank statement, we're ticking off the invoices, and they have processes built to manage all of this. And for me and you as well at my sites, like we've just never even built these. Because you've got these pool methods, you just don't need this process. So if you can force everybody on the cards and direct debit, yes, you may at one point lose a customer or two, but you're making your life so much easier. You're moving all of that. Now, still, of course, some people's direct debits might fail sometimes. Some people's cards will fail, but there's things to get those eventually. And so you have to chase those people up, but it's such a smaller portion of people than it is people who just forget to pay the invoice. So it's a really, really interesting thing. And I think it's probably people who've just started in the past 2 or 3 years who've never done it. We just think, well, why would I ever get into that?
Agreed. And I think there's a real cost to a non-pull method, as you say, which is just you or your employees' time, and so that has a cost, as well as for being paid much later. So yeah, I think it's I'm so glad we don't do it, and I think actually it also helps having a much lower level of failed payments. I know our let's say ours is extremely low, so we're happy with that.
Excellent. Okay, great. Okay, so So we've talked then about sort of how you find customers, how you sort of bring them in once they've booked and paid, and well, just quickly then, do you do ID checks? Do you do contracts?
So we do ID check and contracts. So customer pays, so they go on our website, so more precisely on the store part of it. They book, they put in their card details, boom, it saves their card. And then they have to sign a contract. So it's yeah, I guess it's a contract. They sign it. They have it's. I think it might be a bit different than in the UK. Well, again, this is just obviously the contract is tailored to French law. And then as part of their contract, they must upload a ID, and also yeah, they upload an ID, and so basically this contract they can either sign it online. So we have a DocuSign. Well, it's not DocuSign. It's not a provider of it. It's called Jotform, which we think is exceptional. And so they can either sign it online. They upload as well a picture of their ID when they sign the form. We also used to ask for proof of address. They sign, and then they can also do that in person. So we have an iPad in our facility where again you have the same Jotform document and you can fill it out on site.
So knowing the way store works, you've built, you don't use the store identity product, and you don't use your own kind of form, which so you create a form and put it into the store system, which is a great way to do it. That gives you the flexibility to do it whatever way you want. So collecting IDs, collecting proof of address, that's all possible. Just build your own form.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's true. We looked at the store solution, which I guess is also a Stripe solution. I think that the reason we didn't use it is because I think it doesn't actually, if I remember well, it doesn't actually say the name of the person. And you don't get to keep the ID, so you kind of lose that proof. And then there's a bit of, and then I mean I think it's a great solution because it's out of the box, it works well. But at least for our use, we thought we thought this other solution. I mean, although we did look at this the Stripe solution, and we launched with a Stripe solution is extremely easy, and
some of the limitations I totally you're absolutely right with Stripe identity, which is the ID thing we have. It doesn't at the moment necessarily, you have to pass the identity check, but you could actually, it doesn't necessarily match it up with the person's name who's booked.
That's funny. We noticed exactly that, but I didn't want to say it, but you're right.
Yeah, and so we've become aware it's not something that's generally like, it's potentially a way to kind of get around it, but you have to actually still get through an ID check. So we've planned to actually change that so that it's going to match up the names. So it has to be the same person booked. And then the other thing, that's the main issue with it actually. And once we fix that, I think it'll make that a little bit more seamless. Okay, cool. Okay, so they've paid, they've found your site, they've spoken to somebody or booked online, they've set up their payments, so they've received an invoice, they've signed a contract, they've done an ID, they've given you their ID, their identity. The other thing I was going to say about the identity process is I think we're going to be able to change that soon, where with our ID thing, where you have access to the identity as well.
Okay.
I think we're going to change how that works. So anyway, there's a couple of, I think, 2 improvements that will come there that might be worth looking at in the future. Anyway, it doesn't matter to us if you use it or not. It's there if you like it.
Okay.
So that's happened. Then what happens then? So they've signed their contract. Everything's good. Do they get a code? How do they get into the facility? Do they have to trump whenever there's staff there? How do you manage access and move-in?
Well, so for the move-in, they so again, the customer selects a date for their move-in, which can either be today or a date in the future. And so if it's today, then obviously he gets his code instantly. If it's a day in the future, he receives his code on the morning of. And so that's mostly done through Stora. And then so they receive a code which lets them get into the facility on the day of. We usually also give it to the customer beforehand, just let's say as a matter of courtesy, and in case there's a problem with the email, but that hasn't been the case so far. And then we try to recommend for customers to move in during our when we're there, because we think usually the customer needs to look for their where's our unit?
Mhm.
They might have questions on a day of. So we recommend they do it when we're there. That's not always possible. But so they can do it even outside of when we're there,
Okay.
thanks to the code. And then we've tried to put a good signage in so people can find our unit. And then people, so we don't have smart locks. We have one on each unit. We have just regular padlocks. And so in our small, let's say, semi-autonomous site, we actually have a padlock kind of distributor. So like a
Like a vending machine.
like a vending machine, exactly. Yeah, a
Oh, nice.
padlock vending machine.
Okay.
It's a cute green vending machine. It's quite small, but it works, and so that also lets people who don't bring a padlock, that lets them check in any time of the day, even when we're not there.
So let's say, Matt, somebody turns up on a Sunday afternoon.
Yep.
Can they go on their phone from outside your building, book the unit, do the ID check, sign the contract, and get a code and move straight in then themselves? Or do you?
Somewhat. Well, somewhat, because so store lets us do that, but we haven't done it yet because we want to check that the contract is well filled out. So there's always a manual step.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone booked on a Sunday, it's to be fair, that happens very rarely.
Mm-hmm.
But we do actually need to validate the contract before we let them in. So yeah.
And so worth saying. So this is the end of September 2024. We're in about 2 weeks. We're releasing built-in contracts into Stora. So maybe worth having a look at that, because you can
Yep.
you could validate all that. Our system will validate things now on your behalf.
Right.
So maybe that's going to be an option shortly. But for now,
Hopefully.
the reason you don't allow that is that you like to check the contract is properly signed to make sure that
Exactly.
they're covered, etc. Yeah.
And actually, that's very important because in France tends to be very protective of tenants, and namely, if a customer doesn't sign a part correctly, basically, if they don't pay their bill, instead of a 2 month, let's say, well, because I think what's quite standard is after 2 months, if a customer doesn't pay, then we have a right to evict them from our unit. But
Yeah.
if the contract isn't properly filled out in France, it's not 2 months, it's a whole year. So that's a part that we need to check.
I see.
Well,
Okay.
it's a minimum of a year. It's a year till we can notify them, and we need to get a judge. We need to go to court to get them to do it. So it's extremely lengthy, extremely costly. So we really just obviously want to avoid that situation. That's what we need to really check.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, so they've moved in. I had a question there about the padlock. So if somebody's moving in, let's say, so they're moving in on Monday, let's say, and there is nobody there, you've checked the contract, everything's happy. So they've turned up, they've used their code to open the front gates.
Yep.
They don't have a padlock with them, so they're buying a padlock.
Yep.
Do you leave the unbooked units unlocked then for them, or
Exactly? Yep. Yep. We leave all the units unlocked.
Okay.
We've at first we thought that might be risky, but it turns out at least our customers have been so far extremely respectful of that. We've only maybe had a handful of customers take another unit, but that's really been occasional. So I mean, we think that actually works really well, and also that's really facilitated by the fact that we have CCTV everywhere. So every single corridor is filmed. So in case someone takes the wrong unit, we're usually able to trace that back and solve it. But yeah, I mean, that's worked really well for us so far.
How much do you sell the padlock for?
We sell them. We have 3 types of padlocks. We have key padlocks and pin padlocks. The cheaper ones are at €9.90, and the more expensive ones at $14.90, which are bigger.
And do you know roughly what percentage of your customers buy those?
Roughly half of them.
Okay, right, nice.
We have a little. We actually engraved our little logo, so we kind of like that. So there's our big Bien Sûr logo on it. So hopefully, when customers leave us, they'll still think of us.
Okay, so that is it's a very efficient way to actually manage a sort of a self-serve move-in. That is because you've got a gate system which is you have to invest in that, but it's relatively inexpensive to put a gate system in place and doors. Whereas if you get to the point where you're putting locks on every single door, you have 300 doors. It's quite a big investment. Now, at my sites, I decided to do that because I didn't want to. I just thought it'd be worth doing. I didn't want to ever have to go in and overlock people. But you've got quite big sites. You've got staff who are there or at least around.
Yep.
And so people can move in, and you've got a revenue stream there on the padlocks. I suppose the risk is, like you just said, there are people move into units, take liberties, take a bigger unit, and try and get away with it. But that doesn't happen very often. So it's interesting to hear somebody that's been doing that, taking that approach, and it's worked well. So that is really good to hear.
Yeah, well, we considered as well smart locks at the beginning, but I think we came to a conclusion that my conclusion is it makes sense on small sites that are unmanned, where I guess your budget is not as important. I'm sure we have stuff there, so kind of exactly as you were saying. And then also my fear with smart padlocks unit, well, sorry, with smart entry, well, fully smart entry systems is, I think these are quite new products. I'm just always afraid that you can have issues. I mean, they sound pretty reliable, and maybe you can attest to where there are issues. But also another thing that one reason again why we didn't do it in those sites is also you become dependent on one vendor, and I think there's just quite a high risk there in case that yeah, I mean, because obviously the systems aren't intercompatible. So I think you want to do it if it really makes sense. But yeah, so and I'm convinced that maybe in 10, 15, 20 years from now it'll become ubiquitous. But I think today it's not a.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not convinced it's a must-have. Although I think there are definitely advantages to it.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So looking ahead, where do you see Bien Sûr in the next 5 or 10 years? Do you have a long-term vision for where you want to bring the company?
Well, we're obviously trying to grow, to find new warehouses. Well, my intent is our intent, we're here for the long run. We have no intent of selling the company, at least as of right now. There's no plan. I mean, the plan is still to remain independent and to manage this business for a long time. So yeah, we're looking at developing new sites, both finding the right. Well, the hard part is just finding the real estate. Also raising the capital. And the future, yeah. So we're just going to try and copy paste what we've done so far, just develop more sites, kind of like we have now. But we're also looking at potential new avenues for growth, because it's true. Let's say our bottleneck, and I'm sure it's probably the same in the UK, is actually finding the right real estate where you can that makes sense both economically, where you get the right planning permissions, where basically everything lines up, where the fire department is happy with your project. And so we're looking at potentially in 5-10 years we think we've built a system that works well. We are we have good online presence, we have good systems, in part thanks to Stora. And so we think there's maybe something to be done in third-party management or maybe franchising. That's not a project for today, but I mean that's maybe for in a few years, because we think also our brand works well, so there's value there. So third-party management would mean we would manage properties for other people. Franchising would mean, well, we would maybe they would use our brand, we would generate leads, maybe some sort of mixes as well. We're also looking at buying other self-storage operators. Right now only in France, so small maybe independent shops so if ever you're French or know of any French people and want to who want to sell their storage site, well, feel free to reach out. I'll be happy to help. Or same if you want someone else to manage your storage site.
And will you be thinking about just France, keeping things in France? Would you rather stay around Paris, or what's geographically? What do you think?
Yeah, for the next few years, we're definitely thinking of sticking around Paris. We think it's a big market. There's plenty of opportunity here. We'll eventually look at growing to other parts of France, and then the other parts of the EU maybe at some point. But I think but what we have realized is we've got to be realistic with these things too, because it's obviously very very sexy to say, hey, we're going to launch in Berlin next year and in London 2 years from now. But again, storage, it's it's obviously different languages. It's so legally things are different, and then also it ends up being a real estate. So it's very very unfortunately real estate is slow and heavily regulated. So each country obviously has different regulations. Even in France, sometimes different localities have different regulations.
Yeah.
Now you need different legal contracts, legal entities.
Even
It quickly gets hairy.
Yeah, even just your knowledge there about if people don't sign the right contract, it can take a year before you can even.
Exactly.
That's not the case in the UK, but there are other challenges in the UK that
I'm sure. Yeah.
France, Germany, they're all different, I'm sure. And so yeah, okay. So, what about so if you've mentioned engineering a couple of times, so you have an engineering background. How do you think that's influenced your career as an entrepreneur and a self-storage operator? You mentioned a couple of obviously really helped, like the ability to look at the Paris market and build some tools to help you. But at a higher level, like, how do you think that's impacted your career?
Yeah. Well, I think it's had both positive and negative impact. I'll start with the negatives because I hope it'll be quick. But yeah, as an engineer, you're taught to you're taught to be a perfectionist and to you can be prone to analysis paralysis. So that's been a challenge of mine to overcome that. Unfortunately, I think I'm getting better. So but they're mostly positives. I think being when you're, I guess, taught as an engineer, you try to become very logical, rational. You try to break down complex problems into simple ones. Also, I think just the world is getting more complicated and more technological, right? You especially here where you have to deal with hardware. So I mean, just the whole facility, and also software.
Yeah.
And namely software. I mean, even though we use Store and that solves, I'd say, the majority of our software issues, are still. I mean, it's still extremely helpful to know how it kind of works. In case you need to troubleshoot, or we built our own actually CRM. So this was because we started using Store before you had a CRM feature, so we still use that, and we've built it using kind of no code tools, and it's just building that has been I took care of building that initially. Now I've handed that over to one of my colleagues who does a great job of that. But yes, I mean, it just helps you understand how a computer works, and so we've built, I think, these processes that really simplify our lives. Because in the end, we just want to keep the admin to as little as possible, and so I think the best way to do that is just to automate as much as possible.
Yeah. Nice one. Okay. Well, so just to the last kind of question, if you could go back to the start of your time in self-storage, so like not the valet storage, but back to the time when you started 2021 in self-storage, are there particular lessons that you've learned? Any advice you would give to yourself if you could?
Yep. Well, a lot. I think a few ones. I think the first one is to not underestimate how complex self-storage is. It's I'm not saying it's the hardest industry out there. I certainly think it's not, but there's a lot more complexity to it than one might initially seem. Namely, construction is very hard. I mean, we had 20 different companies, 20 different contractors do construction. There's also a lot to do around permitting. That's also quite hard, and at least in France, it's quite complex. There's some, and especially in France, there aren't clear rules for self-storage. So let's say the legal environment isn't very clear, because it's quite a new industry, and so I would highly recommend people who launch themselves to really speak to people who've done it. Whether I'm sure a lot of operators are happy to do that freely, but also there are some consultants out there, and I mean, I know I learned so much from one particular consultant. We were all, I mean, the fees I paid him were probably the best investment I've done at Bien Sûr. He helped us avoid so many kind of mistakes and pitfalls that would have cost us so much money and so much time. So,
And was that somebody in the French? Was that somebody in the French market, or somebody from the UK market, or elsewhere?
this was someone from a French market. Yes, I would definitely recommend someone who knows your local
Okay, yeah.
local country. He's actually, I think, Belgian, but he
Okay.
but he worked in France quite a while.
Do you want to recommend him, or is he too busy to be recommended to lots of people?
Yeah, he's a great guy. His name is Peter Broodkorn. So Peter Broodkorn. He used to work at I think he used to work for many years for Shoreguard, and now he does that on the side, and he's amazing. So I highly recommend him.
Great. Okay. Yeah. So.
Or also, I'm very happy to. I'm also very happy to help people just on a to get on a call. Feel free to. Well, I'm happy to help on a free basis.
Great, thanks, Matt. Yeah, I'm sure there'll be people listening who'd love to hear more, because we've touched on, I think, quite a lot of really interesting stuff here, and there's lots of stuff we haven't got talking about. But I think I found it really interesting. I love to hear how people run their self-storage business. I just think it is just so fascinating. Just even just learning the way you handle the padlocks, that for me is really interesting. I just think that's
okay. That's funny. Okay.
Just because lots of our customers talk to us about how to manage the move-in process, and having a vending machine on site with padlocks, leaving your doors open. It is a great solution. That is really interesting. And to where you are, 78% in a year and a half. That's through 2023. That's something. So there's obviously lots to learn from you, Matt. So I'm sure if anyone is listening, I'm sure they'd love to take you up on that.
Yeah, well, I'd really be happy to help. I mean, feel free to, anyone listening is welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn, or you can find me. My name is Mathieu Bernard. Well, I'm sure maybe Gavin, you'll include a link, but I'm very happy to answer to any questions. Also, I mean, I do want to say I also feel like, well, again, 3 years ago I knew nothing about self-storage, and I also, well, I feel it's normal to pass a baton, because I've learned so much from so many not exactly competitors, but other people in self-storage industry have been particularly particularly kind with their time. And I've spoken to so many people who have explained so much of this, and so I'm also, well, I just want to give a shout out to all those people. And and self-storage people in general, I think, are very friendly. Even local competitors, we have great relationships with them. So I think it's a great industry to be in.
Absolutely. Okay, Matt, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. It's been great to talk to you and hear more about your journey at Bien Sûr, and look forward to seeing where it goes.
Thanks for having me, Gavin. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Self-Storage Explained, where we aim to provide expert advice on how to set up and scale your self-storage business. For more resources, including financial models and in-depth guides for setting up or growing your business, visit our Self-Storage Academy at stora.co, that's stora.co/academy. And if you would like to find out more about how Stora can help your business grow sales and save time, set up a demo or contact us at stora.co, that's stora.co. Thank you.